Cũng như nhiều dự báo trước đó, mặc dù là năm con rồng nhưng không có nhiều lạc quan về nền kinh tế Việt Nam. Thực tế cho thấy năm 2012 là một năm đầy giông bão, khó khăn cho nhà nước cũng như các doanh nghiệp. Đến cuối năm, nền kinh tế dự báo tăng trưởng 5,2%, thấp hơn so với mục tiêu từ 6 cho đến 6,5% do nhà nước đề ra trước đó. Nhưng tình hình doanh nghiệp suy thoái là một hiện tượng đáng lo ngại, có thể dẫn đến viễn cảnh thiểu phát. Đến nay, con số thống kê chính thức cho thấy số doanh nghiệp đóng cửa hơn 50.000 đã vượt qua con số đăng ký thành lập mới. Kỳ họp Quốc hội vừa qua đã thông qua những chỉ tiêu năm 2013 khiêm tốn hơn trước. Tổng sản phẩm trong nước GDP tăng khoảng 5,5%, tốc độ tăng giá tiêu dùng CPI khoảng 8%, kim ngạch xuất khẩu tăng khoảng 10%, tỷ lệ nhập siêu khoảng 8%, bộ chi ngân sách nhà nước không quá 4,8% GDP, tổng vốn đầu tư phát triển toàn xã hội bằng khoảng 30% GDP, tạo việc làm cho khoảng 1,6 triệu lao động. Các đại biểu cũng nhất trí tiếp tục đẩy mạnh thực hiện 3 đột phá chiến lược gắn với tái cơ cấu nền kinh tế, chuyển đổi mô hình tăng trưởng và đảm bảo an sinh xã hội, phúc lợi xã hội, đồng thời tiếp tục nâng cao hiệu quả công tác đối ngoại và hội nhập quốc tế, tăng cường quốc phòng, an ninh và đảm bảo ổn định chính trị xã hội. Qua đó, các nỗ lực của năm 2013 sẽ tạo nền tảng phát triển vững chắc hơn cho những năm tiếp theo.
Chào quý vị đến với chương trình Cận cảnh của FBNC. Thưa quý vị, chẳng mấy chốc mà chúng ta đã có mặt vào tháng 12 của năm 2012. Năm 2012 là một năm có rất nhiều giông bão khó khăn. Chúng tôi muốn câu chuyện cuối năm được thưa với quý vị một cái cách nhìn đến nền kinh tế Việt Nam trong năm 2012 cũng như những điều mà chúng ta có thể dự báo cho năm 2013. Chúng tôi rất vui là có mặt ở phim trường hôm nay một khách mời đặc biệt là ông Attila Vajala, là chuyên gia kinh tế. Ông Attila hiện giờ đang làm giám đốc quan hệ với các sàn tài chính của công ty chứng khoán ACBC.
Xin chào and thank you for the invitation, and I would like to greet all the TV viewers of Zoom and FBNC.
Attila, I learned that you are going to Europe for vacation year end. If you were Santa Claus, what will you bring good news from Vietnam to your fellow and your partner?
There are many good news to bring back to Europe. As everybody knows, in Europe is a very gloomy situation. And the good news that I can bring back to my fellow Europeans is that in ASEAN in general and Vietnam in particular, there is a very good economic climate and there is still good growth. And for Vietnam in particular, this year has been a turning point in my view, and the macro environment have been stabilized, preparing the way for a next cycle of growth. And many good macro indicators are pointing to the right direction. So it's a very exciting time for investors to come here.
It's really good news. Can you tell us that what kind of investment they are to Vietnam?
Basically, the investors look at almost every single sector. They look at financials, they look at manufacturing, they look at services, tourism.
They want to buy the local business, or they want to join hands to develop the business here?
Preferably, when foreign investors come here, they would prefer to have a local partner, and they would prefer to have a joint venture or tie up with somebody, because it's coming from so far away, it's very hard to understand the local market, the local flavors, and they would prefer that. But obviously, if they cannot find the right partner to do a joint business, or they feel that the partners are not trustworthy, then they would like to buy the business 100%. So it really depends on the industry, on the situation of how they find partners, and what their strategic long-term objective here.
You know that the media normally at the year-end evaluation, we will nominate top 10 events which shape the economy of the world or the country. How about you, if you can nominate some event to say about Vietnam economy in 2012?
For Vietnam specifically, I think the economy has been influenced by external factors and also internal factors. From the external factors that influence Vietnam, of course, the European crisis is one of the big ones. Europe is one of the biggest export markets, affecting the exporters. Coming to the internal sectors, I think the biggest headlines were related to the banking sector, and that has been in the front pages of the media, which obviously are relevant. But there are many other issues that affect the economy, such as the very stable currency. It's probably the best year for the Vietnam dong for many years going back. So that is a very important thing that happened to Vietnam: a stable currency, inflation coming down. So that again, it's a very, very important thing that has been done already.
Again, how about the banking people now still worry about a lot of bad debt?
There is a lot of worry, and obviously the small businesses feel that the banks are not willing to lend so easily because they have a lot of bad debt, and that is something that will affect the economy next year as well. It is something that it will take time to solve. It cannot be solved in 6 months or 1 year, and should not be a major concern for next year.
So far, how long have you been in Vietnam? I think over 5 years?
Almost 5 years.
And if you compare Vietnam with 5 years ago, 6 years ago, what kind of critical change already happened in Vietnam?
I think there have been many fundamental changes, especially if I can say the 2008-2011 period was one of like a hangover after the big party. There was a big growth, and 2008-2011, the economy tried to adjust to what was happening. After a very big growth period, there have been many issues, but still the focus was on growth at any cost. Compared to that, 2011-2012, it's about stable environment and qualitative growth. So in that sense, I think the direction is very good now, is the most important thing that is promoted, and this will create sustainable growth.
You mentioned many times that the macroeconomy stability or something that's stable, but people sometimes worry that stable means slow. How you think about that?
I don't necessarily agree to that one. Obviously, they worry because now it's slower than it used to be. I mean, Vietnam 10-year average growth rate of GDP used to be 7.1%. We are now talking about 5.2%, 5.4% growth. So obviously much slower than used to be. But if we compare with other emerging markets, for example, the BRIC countries, the growth rate of the BRIC countries also dropped more than 2%. So it's slower because there is no global demand for products in general, and the whole global economy is slowing, so obviously Vietnam has to slow down. But in fact, in a stable macro environment, it's a good, healthy, sustainable growth that can be fast if there is demand and the companies are healthy. But Vietnamese people are very impatient, and they would like a quick fix. But these things take time, and have to have more patience. Obviously, when people's business suffer, they face economic hardship. They don't have the patience to wait until 2014. But that's a timeline that can be achieved, and it's very unrealistic to hope that it will be a very fast growth in the next year.
Thank you, Attila. I think that we have at least that quite positive picture about year of 2012, and we are waiting your talk about the forecast 2013. Cảm ơn quý vị. Chúng ta sẽ trở lại cuộc trao đổi với ông Attila và chúng ta sẽ nói chuyện với nhau về viễn cảnh của 2013, kinh tế Việt Nam và kinh tế thế giới. Rất vui gặp lại các quý vị trong chương trình trao đổi cuối năm nhìn lại kinh tế Việt Nam và dự báo viễn cảnh 2013. Mr. Attila, you gave us a very positive picture about Vietnam economy. Although around us, the world economy quite slowed down. Do you think that 2013, the world economy still slowed down and we could not get further good news about the recovery of Europe, US or Japan?
I would say that indeed 2013 will be for many people pretty much similar to what has been 2012. The issues in Europe, they are very complex and very big. So, and of course, we are still talking about fiscal cliff in US. So it will be more uncertainty in US as well. And Japan is continuously facing difficulties on macro level, on population levels. But at least China, it seems that is getting back to the growth path again, to a sustainable growth path. So will be definitely better than 2012, but probably just marginally better.
Otherwise, we look around, we also consider now ASEAN country. They mentioned that they want to boost, they want to speed up the ASEAN economy community by 2015. And also the initial about Trans-Pacific Park, the trade platform between US and Pacific country. Do you think they are also good opportunity for Vietnam to catch up?
I would say that in the global context, the next 5 years will be the years of ASEAN. If you look at 2012 as already, the ASEAN country stock markets outperformed all the stock markets in the world as a bloc. So it is the year of ASEAN, and that's where a lot of growth, a lot of opportunities will be. In this context, Vietnam is positioned perfectly. It's in the heart of ASEAN to some extent, very well connected to all the countries, and very good tie with the US as well. So it's a lot of growth opportunities there, and a lot of opportunities for Vietnamese companies to seek growth in these regions to compensate for the slower growth in US, in Europe, in Japan.
We have the talent.
Exactly, and it's much harder for Vietnamese companies to compete in ASEAN because ASEAN countries are similar to Vietnam, similar labor costs, the similar resources, so to speak. So it's harder to compete, but have to go to ASEAN in order to have good growth.
Opportunity, but also challenge.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Let's
say about challenge. That another challenge that we see whole the year that a lot of tension in Pacific Ocean. Do you think now business people have to consider that about long-term business strategy because of the tension in the Pacific Ocean?
Definitely, we see that the case of Japan and China tensions had great impact on the trade relations and on the tourism between the two countries, and that's something that have to consider very, very carefully. But at the end of the day, from a strategic point of view, the only way to balance these issues is to have a strong ASEAN, and within that to have a strong Vietnam, both economically, politically. So in that sense, a focus on ASEAN, besides maintaining very good trade relationships with Europe, US, Russia, India, is very, very important.
We should improve business and trade, and also it's better for defense.
Definitely. I mean, having strong relations, trade relations, and businesses and people coming and going with US, Europe, India, Russia, ASEAN, that would position Vietnam in a place where the business interests of all these big countries would not allow an escalation of any tensions that would be harmful.
Back to Vietnam, another challenge people talk that we are doing hardly the restructuring economy, and particularly the state-run enterprise. Do you think is it very high cost we have to pay if we fail in the reform of the state-run company, and particularly the big chaebol like the matter people talk about Vinasip, Vinasin, etc.?
It's one of the biggest questions and one of the biggest fear of foreign investors is that this process of dealing with state-owned enterprises will be delayed. We have seen good reforms in the banking sector, in the capital markets, and in some sectors, but investors still are not convinced that this reform process in the state-owned sector will continue. And the problem is that the state-owned sector has access to very cheap capital, very cheap funds, but they're not using it efficiently, and it's an economic waste. Vietnam has very good examples of having very good and efficient enterprise with this state ownership. If you look at Vinamilk, if we look at Petro-Vietnam Drilling, these have been state enterprises transformed into companies that can compete regionally, can compete on a global environment. Many times people say that have to be privatized or have to be sold to private investors. But obviously I understand the argument that now it's too cheap to sell. And I would not recommend it, and I agree Vietnam government should not sell it too cheap. We've seen in Eastern Europe